Hi everyone, so for today's video, we're going to talk about naming compounds. So there are four categories that we are going to discuss, and the first one is naming compounds with single charge cations, and the second one is compounds with polyatomic ions, and the third one is acid, and the fourth one is the covalent compounds. So each of this category, of course, have their own rules and strategies, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So to start with, we have this first category, which is the compounds with single charge cations. And the first example here is the compound with a symbol of Ba and S. So with this example, our first step is to identify first the element or the atoms that are being involved in this compound. So for the first element, Ba, of course, it stands for barium, and the S stands for sulfur. So these are the elements that are part in this compound. Now that we have identified the name of the element, we're going to write down or identify which one is the cation and the anion. So usually, the cation are the metallic atoms, while the anion are usually the non-metal atoms. So in this example, barium is the metallic. Therefore, this is the cation in this compound, while the sulfur will be the anion of this compound. Okay. Now that we have identified which one is the cation and which one is the anion, we're going to write down the name of the element of the cation. So all you need to do is to copy the name of barium, and then for sulfur, which is our anion, since it only has one kind of atom, which is of course the sulfur, then you're going to change the ending part or the end name of the sulfur into IDE. So instead of sulfur, it's going to be sulfide. So the name of this compound with single charge cations will be barium sulfide. So for the next example, we have this AlCl3 compound. So again, following the rules that I have discussed, our first step is to name or to identify the name of the atoms or elements that are being involved here. So for Al, of course, this is aluminum, and Cl3 is for chlorine. So now that we have identified, next is to identify which one is the cation and which one is the anion. So again, for the cation, we have this aluminum, since this is usually a metal or a metalloid, while the non-metal is the chlorine, and of course this is going to become the anion, since they are the one that gains the electron. So for the third step is to write down the name of the cation. So this is going to be aluminum, and then for the anion, since it is an ion with only one kind of atom, which is Cl or chlorine, then all you need to do is to change the ending part or ending name of the chlorine into IDE. So instead of chlorine, it's going to be chloride. So overall, the final name of this compound will be aluminum chloride. So that's how we name compounds with single charge cations. Okay. So moving on to the next category, which is about the compounds with polyatomic ions. So in naming these compounds with polyatomic ions, all you need to do is to remember this following polyatomic ions that I will present on the screen. Yeah, here. So these are the examples of polyatomic ions that you need to remember, because they are very important to name or to identify the name of the compounds. So okay, so moving on, we have here the first example, which is compound with Na2Cr2O7. So to name this compound, all you need to do is to identify the name of the elements or the cations and polyatomic ions. So for the cation or the first element, we have this Na, which of course stands for sodium. Meanwhile, the Cr2O7 is our polyatomic ions since it contains Cr, chromium, and oxygen. And of course, the name of these polyatomic ions is dichromate. Now that we have identified their name, all you need to do is to copy their name and write it down. So the name of this compound will be sodium plus dichromate. It will be sodium dichromate. Okay, so for the next example, we have here the CaNO32. Okay, so this second example is a bit different compared to the one because we have here the parentheses of the polyatomic ion. Okay, so that's the first step to identify again. To identify the name of this compound is of course to know the name of the cation and the polyatomic ion. So for this example, we have the Ca. The cation will be the calcium, while the NO3 of course is going to be the nitrate, which is the polyatomic ion. So then you're going to write down, copy the name, then the name of the compound will be calcium nitrate. So that's how you name the compound with polyatomic ions. So take note that in this second example, there is a close and open parentheses. This is for you to determine the number of polyatomic ions present in this compound, and the number 2 is actually from the charge of the calcium. So that's it on how you name the compounds with polyatomic ions. Third category is about naming acids. So acids are usually compounds that has a presence of extra hydrogen at the beginning of the compound. Like for example, we have here the HBr, HCl, so these are examples of acids. So to name this compound, the first thing that we need to do is to identify if the anion in the compound has only one kind of atom or if it is a polyatomic ion that contains a oxygen. So if the anion has only one kind of atom, meaning all you need to do is to change its name or add IC acid and hydro at the beginning of the compound. But if the anion in the compound is a polyatomic ion and has a presence of oxygen, then you need to know first if it's a polyatomic ion that has the most number of oxygen or if it is the only second polyatomic ion that has the most number of oxygen. So if the polyatomic ion has the most number of oxygen, then it will get the last name ATE, and the second polyatomic ion with the most number of oxygen will be the one to get the ITE ending name. So for example, if the polyatomic ion has a ending ATE, then you need to change the ATE into IC acid while also keeping the base name of the ion or of the anion. So meanwhile, if the anion has a ending name of ITE, then you're going to change the ITE into OUS acid to name the acid compound while also keeping the base name of the ion. So that's how so these are the rules of naming acids. Now let's try to look at this example. So the first one we have here the H2SO3. So H2SO3 is an acid because there is a presence of hydrogen at the beginning of the compound. So SO3 will be the anion and the polyatomic ion, and as you can see there is a presence of oxygen. So you need to identify if it is the polyatomic ion with the most number of oxygen or if it is only the second one. So SO3 stands for sulfite. Therefore, it is the polyatomic ion with the second most number of oxygen. And since it is sulfite, we need to change the ITE into OUS acid while keeping the base name sulfur. So the name of this compound or of this acid will be sulfurous acid. Okay, so for the second example, we have here H2SO4. So comparing to the first example, it has a greater number of oxygen. So this will be an ion will be, of course, sulfate. And following the rules, since the ending name is sulfate, then we need to change it into IC acid. Therefore, the name of this compound will be, or of this acid will be, sulfuric acid. So that's how you name compounds that are acids. So to name covalent compounds, we use prefixes. So these are the prefixes that we use to name covalent compounds. We have here 1 for mono, 2 for di, 3 for tri, 4 for tetra, and 5 for penta, and so on and so forth. So these prefixes are used to identify the number of atoms or elements in the compound, usually in the first element and the second element. So let's have or take a look at this first example. We have here the PCl3. So the first step, of course, is to identify the name of the element present in the compound. So we have here the P, which stands for phosphorus, and Cl3 is for chlorine. Okay, then our next step, of course, is to identify the number of atoms present in each element. So since P, usually it contains 1, so we can use mono, but we can also drop it since it is in the beginning of the compound. We usually don't use mono if the element of the first compound has only 1. And then for the second atom, which is the Cl, it contains of 3 atoms of chlorine. Therefore, we're going to use the prefix tri since it stands for 3. It stands for 3 numbers of atoms. Then we can get the name of the covalent compounds as phosphorus trichloride. Wow. Okay, so moving on to the next sample, we have N2O5. So again, since the first element contains 2 nitrogen, then we're going to use di prefix. Then here in the second atom contains 5 elements of oxygen, or 5 atoms of oxygen. Therefore, we're going to use the prefix penta. However, there is a special rule in terms of this example. Since the prefix or our prefix ends with A or O, and our second element has a its first name contains a vowel, which is an O, then we need to drop the last name of the prefix in the penta. We need to drop the A, and then so that we can have a smooth naming of this atom. So the name of this this compound will be dinitrogen pentoxide. So we drop the last name or last letter of the prefix A so that we can get the pentoxide, which is smoother to name this compound. So that's how we name covalent compounds. I hope that you learned something in naming compounds from the 4 categories, from compounds with single charge cations to compounds with polyatomic ions, then naming acids and covalent compounds. So I hope that you learned something from this video. Thank you for watching.